What I'm learning about this book is that it's challenging to give a sense of its totality. It has so many strands. So instead, I've been creating readings based on themes I hope will resonate with each particular audience. So for this very special reading, with some of the most favorite people of mine in this room and on Zoom, I would like to take you backstage, so to speak. Spill the tea with you when that T stands for truth. I'd like to share a couple of things about this book's process, its inner workings, how and why I made some choices I made, and reflect briefly on what I might have done differently were I to write Strands now. So here's my first tea spilling. You know the bumper sticker, I want to be the person my dog thinks I am? I want to be the person who wrote this book. Okay, I'm going off script now and making something up, maybe. So you may not know this, but WHRB has a awesome R&B program on at 9 o'clock in the morning, which I listen to if I drive here to meeting. It's a strange thing to listen to coming to this space, but I just love it. Anyway, so somebody started singing, I want to be the love I sing in my songs. And did I think that that was a message particularly for me? Yes, I did. So I want to be the love that I'm writing about in this book. Yeah, she's so compassionate. She's not judgy. Her discernment process is wise and spirit-led. And when she senses that a deeper wisdom is at work, she can let things go. Which brings me to my first passage about radical acceptance. Sometimes nature means open and unpeopled and wild, a place I drive to, or like Lake Superior, travel by airplane so as to marvel. Sometimes in these days of COVID-19, yearning to lose myself in the beauty and majesty surrounding me, I drive to a nearby wildlife preserve or refuge, and masked and filled with wonder and joy, I gratefully walk through the magnificent forest or beside a pristine kettle pond. Remember, we walked in nature masked? But sometimes, especially during this first spring during lockdown, when my friend Minga Claggett-Bourne noted, death is all around us and spring has never been so amazing. I sit on my back porch and listen to this tiny piece of real estate's abundance of birds. In 2012, the city of Somerville created a small, delightfully landscaped park from a vacant lot on Quincy Street, the next street over. This lot abuts our carriage house. Definitely operating from a shared space of scarcity, when this possible green space had been first proposed, the initial neighborhood meetings at City Hall were contentious. One night, neighbors yelling and interrupting each other, and off-duty police officers seated amongst us jested sotto voce, but loud enough for me to hear. Should have brought my gun. Eventually, as if coached by our neighborhood's flora and fauna, who do not recognize fences or property rights, we bickerers found common ground. So now my husband's and my tenth of an acre lot, sizable by Somerville standards, is part of a larger bird-rich ecosystem. Seated on my deck, drinking my morning coffee and writing in my journal, I am surrounded by birdsong. Cardinals, blue jays, sparrows, house finches, chickadees, goldfinches, 3 swallows circle above. And I am filled with, is there a noun for this? That feeling Minga described of never been so. I have never felt such deep gratitude, shrouded by such deep sadness. Sometimes nature lies beyond my backyard, but still very close to home. On my masked walks through Somerville these days, hungry for a glimpse of Turtle Island green, I've noticed inexplicably tall pine trees towering over the 2 or 3-story frame buildings beside them, their needle branches filling what little remains of a city plot. Those pine trees are all over Somerville. Why weren't these giants cut down years ago? How have these magnificent trees survived in a formerly working-class city where landscaping could sometimes mean a postage-sized asphalt-sealed yard, dotted by 1 or 2 joint compound buckets filled with plastic flowers? To be fair, even in the bad old days, when Somerville had been called Slummerville, some owners, many of them Italian or Portuguese, tended grape arbors or 1 or 2 fruit trees. They'd farmed compact, often terraced gardens. And if those aging homeowners have not been priced out of their homes, they still do. Right. Had these pine trees survived because they looked like 3-story Christmas trees and were therefore holy? Are they still here because they don't require leaf raking or the yearly dangerous ritual of unclogging the gutters? Or do they remain because, for generations, the human occupants of Somerville's tiny plots have loved to fall asleep, windows open, and listen to the sound of wind soughing through pine branches, as humans have always loved that same soothing sound since Sky Woman fell out of the sky and Jesus walked this precious earth? I don't know, but I am childishly grateful whenever I spot one. Fewer birds sing as loud, Veronica Barron, a young woman from this meeting, offered at a recent Zoom meeting for worship as she sat outside in her own tiny backyard. Sparrows and crows, maybe a pigeon or 2 audible in the background. I heard so much in her message. I heard her pain at nature's diminishment. I heard her joy to be in worship in citified space. I heard her celebrate robust aliveness. I heard her radical acceptance of what is here, available now, as is, and sacred. So here's a regret, friends. I name radical acceptance, but nowhere in Strands do I really explore that. I don't really dig in. I wish I'd spent more time and energy on this challenging yet crucial spiritual practice. My only justification is that perhaps 5 years ago, when I wrote this book, all of us experiencing a global pandemic, to accept things that we cannot change, as the Serenity Prayer implores, seemed more possible, more accessible. So maybe those 6 syllables didn't need to be spelled out. But there's so much more to say, right? Especially in this confusing and overwhelming and often cruel post-COVID time. How do we talk about radical acceptance? Here's more tea spilling. Using this book as a starting point, I am imagining further, deep, and rich conversations about this and other topics on Zoom, in living rooms, in community spaces, in places of worship. Let's keep the talk going. The next bit is just a few sentences. They're from a passage about my father's last night. I chose to not read the whole passage because it just felt too hard for you all to take this in. But there's something here I think you will find interesting, especially you, John Bob. Interspersed. So this is my father's last full night alive, and it's in Cape Cod Hospital, and he's angry. He was a sailor, and like many people who are approaching death, he saw himself on a journey on a boat, and at some point when I was trying to get him to stay in his bed, he looked at me and he said, "How long have you been in the Navy?" And then he fired me. Yeah, he said, "Oh, your services are no longer required." In his most formal patrician voice, "You may present me with your bill in the morning." Poor man. Interspersed throughout that fraught night were brief, moving interludes, such as I'd always imagined. We sang together, just as we've done since I was a baby. And indeed, as the evening deepened, we sang "Abide with Me" over and over. So, "Abide with Me." How many of you know that hymn? Okay, we might even burst into song. Those of you on Zoom, you'll have to mute yourself. So those of you who know this hymn, may have noticed that the lyrics have been changed. The hymn goes, "Abide with me, fast falls the eventide. The darkness deepens, Lord, with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, oh, abide with me." How many of you want to sing? How many of you want to sing? No.
I have to do it. I'm throw singing.
Okay. Abide with me, fast falls the eventide. The darkness deepens, Lord, with me. When help of the helpless, oh, abide with me. So, as John Bach and others from the Sharing Circle know, I was not happy with that change. But in a moment of sensing a deeper wisdom, remember that woman that I want to be? I gave in. Why? Because Eric Muir, Barclay Press's editor, explained to me that whenever possible, that small Quaker press, which lost major funding because it began publishing LGBTQ books, avoids using the word darkness in a negative context. So I had to respect that. Deeper wisdom. Even though that's how the song goes. Okay. We're coming in on the home stretch, my dears. The third and last reading is actually a standalone, baked right in. I'd like to believe that back in the 50s, when my mother noticed a recipe for Christmas stolen in a ladies' home journal or Good Housekeeping magazine, she remembered eating a delicious, buttery slice of that sweetbread as a child. Charmed and warmed by this rare, vivid, happy childhood memory, and wanting to share such deliciousness with her family, Mom immediately tore that recipe out. Like many mothers, the role of high priestess of good cheer and making sure everyone has a spectacular Christmas had been foisted on Mom. A stressful and exhausting role made more challenging by her decidedly non-spectacular childhood holidays. And that with every move, our family's traditions and rituals became more and more indispensable. If the six of us sat down for dinner at precisely 6, if, like other New England-based families, we ate salmon and peas on the 4th of July, if we had stolen for breakfast at Christmas, if we performed the same ceremonies and rituals in Lynchburg, Virginia, or Huntsville, Alabama, that we had performed in Fayetteville, New York, or Stowe, Massachusetts, would we feel less confused, uncertain, afraid? His own childhood Christmases decidedly merry and bright. Dad pretty much dictated our Christmas shoulds. His specifications included how tinsel should be hung, 1/3 of each silvery strand on the back of each piney branch, 2/3 on front, and how the high priestess of good cheer should behave. Not in the Christmas spirit, Pet, my holly jolly father scolded her in the weeks leading up to Christmas, should my harried mother fuss, complain, nag, lose her temper. Running on empty, unable to cheerily fulfill her role, by tearing out that stolen recipe and baking that sweet bread every year, my ever-resilient mother claimed her own agency, her own inviolate and loving contribution to our Christmas rituals. Or so I'd like to believe. But oh dear. Many Christmases later, when my aged parents had been unable to join my husband, daughters, and me for Christmas in Somerville, my mother thoughtfully ordered us a stolen from a Harvard Square bakery. And lo, we discovered there's another wunderbar, expertly made in Germany for centuries stolen, lightly dusted with powdered sugar and filled with orange peel, raisins, and chopped almonds. And then there's the god-awful recipe Mom tore out. I don't even know why I bother, she muttered to herself a couple of years before she died, standing at my kitchen stove, stirring a buttercream frosting, which traditionally was served still hot. She slathered on an either underbaked or singed at the corners loaf filled with disgusting, artificially colored red and green candied fruit. Nobody even likes stolen. Like a remembered slice, wunderbar or my mother's, so much is baked into this story. So much is here, so much of it. Imagine some of it warm and delicious, some of it inedible and uneaten, and to be pushed to the edge of the only used at Christmas plate. There's the touching possibility that my mother's remembered Madeline slice of stolen had been baked by one of her German relatives from her father's side and savored as a toddler before her father abandoned his wife and his two small daughters. There's the yawning, lamentable gap between my mother's love-dusted intention and the hot mess our family actually ate on Christmas morning. There's my brother Ben, his daughter Tina, my daughter Allison, and me, all of us now eating gluten-free, understanding why our Christmas memories feel a little queasy. But mostly, there's this. Like a generous roll of marzipan, sometimes placed down the middle of two halves of stolen dough, and then snugly tucked into the folded halves. At her core, my mother had been a first-rate high priestess. Within her lay reverence, awe, a deep awareness of light, mystery, wonder, and a baked right in instinct to solemnize her deep awareness. Tragically, her 5-person congregation never recognized Mom's ministry. Every year on the winter solstice, when she'd excitedly announce, "The days are getting longer," we'd shrug our shoulders. Distracted and besotted by Christmas, in the truest sense of the word, accustomed to this Christmas-rooted holiday, Christian-rooted holiday, we didn't understand. Let me read that again because, accustomed to this Christian-rooted holiday, we didn't understand. I didn't understand. As a smart-ass young adult, if I gave any notice to my mother's yearly pronouncement or how, after she and Dad moved to Cape Cod, she began to glory in the quality of the light, I'd probably dismissed her excitement as something to do with her seasonal affectiveness disorder, a condition that she'd begun talking about. But after I began to explore my mother's, like something out of Dickens' childhood, with a series of therapists, after our mother-daughter relationship deepened, after my own relationship with light, mystery, and wonder deepened, I too began to notice. I began to see our light-imbued world through my mother's reverent eyes. Where we differed, my efficiently rose-smelling mother and I, was about the length of those quality of light-affirming moments. Serendipitously, my light-awed mother died at age 95 in October of 2018, very soon to this day. That wondrous time of year in New England, when the autumn sun is low in the sky and the world glows. One glowing afternoon, a week or so after she died, I walked past a crimson and auburn-leafed sugar maple. Prompted by its flamboyance, I opened myself to Mom. "What do you want to teach me?" I asked out loud. "Be grateful," the answer, which I heard as, "Look at this precious world around you. See it, all of it. Pay attention. Take in its beauty, its brokenness, its underdone and singed bits. Be grateful you're alive to experience all of it." Sometimes now, I think about my mother's mother, and that, and that, and that, for generations. Sometimes I let my imagination take me to a bleak, pre-Christian midwinter's night. A fierce snowstorm raging outside, and my ancestral, multi-great-grandmother, seated by a robust fire, telling stories of promise and hope and the return of the light to her grandchildren. Her stories assure her confused, uncertain, afraid listeners that, yes, as the Gospel of John puts it, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has never overcome it. She tells the same wondrous stories her grandmother told her, but embellished and improved. Of course, that's what grandmothers do. And like those ancestral women, like me, my harried and often overwhelmed mother, through her ritual of keeping track of our tilted planet's journey around the sun, found sustenance, found hope, found grounding. She'd acknowledged Mother Earth beneath her feet and where planet A was on its journey around the sun. Briskly, no doubt, or so I'd like to believe. To honor my mother, to honor my ancestors, and to ground myself every morning, a still full mug of French roast coffee close at hand and waiting. I sleepily practice a daily ritual like I've always done for decades. I note the day's time and the weather. But since my mother's death, I also record the time the sun will set that day too. Some mornings, my left hand merely propels my pen across the journal page. And some mornings, I am gifted. Those pen squiggles and jots become all wholeness, awe. A date, a time. Those few noted digits remind me that a resident on this precious pale blue dot, I am a part of an ebbing and flowing story. On consecutive bleak midwinter mornings when I note 4:15, 4:14, 4:13, I remind myself the light shines on, and I am so grateful to be reassured. More. So here's a couple of things I want to say before we can all be so grateful to be together today. I love writing. It kind of wrote itself. That happens, right, Monday? Right, Susan Lloyd? Sometimes it writes itself. Second, during the long pause between the time I'd signed the contract with Barclay Press and Strands was finally published, both my sister and my brother died. So I considered dedicating this book to them. It's dedicated to my mother. But from page one, I'd known that this book was to be dedicated to my mother. I cannot explain how that informed the finished product. I just know that it did. So I honored that. And yes, given Paul and Deborah's deaths, I also considered rewriting the entire book. But I decided that the strands preserved in aspect written during COVID had merit. Even now, I'm sure it's true for you as it's true for me. I am still brought up short when I remember something we all just did during the lockdown. So I rewrote the acknowledgements, not the book. And by the way, tomato, that preserved in aspic is an old English thing. Aspic is a kind of jelly. And maybe this is true with your family's tomato aspic, which was a 50s culinary phenomenon my mother made for parties, was another one of her nostalgic recipes. And like her stolen, not delicious. So to end, a huge shout out to all of you who reached out to me as I grieved my siblings. Your love, your friendship, your cards and notes and phone calls, your walks and talks, your book suggestions. Where would I be without that Slow Horses series? I am so grateful. And when more than one of you reminded me that my brother's death anniversary was coming up, how was I going to deal? I got a grief counselor. So thank you. I was awake in the wee hours of today and totally obsessing about how big that cake was. And I've made peace with that part of it because when I ordered it, I was thinking of how much I love all of you so much. And so I got a little greedy. But also a story came to me that I want to share with you that's from my heart. So as is referenced in Strands, there was a peach colored cotton scarf, which is why I'm wearing a scarf today, that sort of suddenly appeared in my house. And this was at about the time that I was working for this meeting as the first day school coordinator. And there were some hard things that were asked of me in that role. And what I used to do was I ordained myself. I took that scarf and I put it around my neck when I knew I was about to have a very challenging conversation. And then I remembered at 3 a.m. this morning that that peach scarf showed up in a dream that I'd had. For years, this will not be hard to analyze. For years, I had a dream that I was in a play, but I didn't know my lines. I didn't know what the play was. I was totally panicking and trying to find at least a script somewhere. But I don't have that dream anymore. And I think it stopped the time that I had a dream where I was in a play and I didn't know my lines. And the stage manager, a la our town. So, you know, Henry Fonda, and Henry Fonda-ish, right? A wise, lovely person took me aside in this dream and said, we know you're nervous. All the stage hands, all the crew, all the actors know that if you are wearing a peach scarf, we are going to take extra special care of you. Thank you, crew. Thank you, orchestra. Thank you, actors. Thank you, stagehands. I am so grateful. Thank you.